Hey guys, as you can see, I am outside today filming in a little local park. So first of all, apologies for any extraneous noises. There are people playing tennis over there, so if you hear grunting, that's what that is. But the other day when I was doing a Q&A on my Instagram, I got a question about whether or not you can lose fat if you have a busy schedule and you can only train 2 days a week, but you can also count macros. And then I also got a question about how much training is too much. So I figured I would just make a whole video on optimal training frequency so that you guys can maximize your progress and really use every minute efficiently and wisely. Leave a little comment down below with your training frequency right now, how you like it, how it's evolved maybe, whatever. Let me know what you're doing. And if you're excited to learn about the minimum and maximum range as well as the optimal amount, give this video a big thumbs up. And without further ado, let's get into it. So I want to start off by talking about the minimum amount of exercise that you need to be doing for your goals. So starting at the bottom, the minimum amount for weight loss is technically 0. All you need to do for an otherwise healthy person to lose weight is to be in a calorie deficit. You do not have to be exercising to be in a calorie deficit. I did not exercise for 7 months and I lost about 4 to 5 pounds. I have made an entire video about how to lose weight with no exercise, so I will link that down in the description if you want to check that out. But in short, it is possible. However, it is not ideal for 2 reasons I am about to discuss. First one is that it is not optimal for health. Like, you do need to be relatively active in order to stay healthy. So that brings me to the minimum amount of exercise for health. And yes, you could follow the government recommended guidelines of, 150 minutes of moderate activity or 75 minutes of intense activity per week, but I personally give slightly different recommendations based on a little more perspective, I think. And so what I recommend personally is aiming for 60 minutes of just movement every single day, plus 2 sessions of resistance training per week. And the resistance training sessions can be moderate intensity or more if you want. The government recommendations don't really account for lifestyle factors and other things that contribute to health. So where the 60 minutes of activity comes from is the fact that living a sedentary lifestyle is very detrimental for your health. So setting a goal of 60 minutes of activity can really help to combat this, especially if you go the extra mile and try to spread this out throughout the day. This is the main reason that I personally set a step goal of 10,000 steps, because I know that if I'm walking at my normal pace, it would take me about an hour to hit 10,000 steps. So if I hit 10,000 steps in the day, that means I have been active for about an hour. But you don't have to get in this activity through steps. That's just the easiest way for me personally to do it, which is why I set that goal. But if you bike to work, if you bike to the grocery store, if you just like to dance around your house, you can even set a timer on your phone for every hour throughout the day to do 5 to 10 minutes of body weight exercises. Any kind of movement counts towards this goal. And then why I've included resistance training as necessary for health is that having muscle is so important in the aging process. When you're younger, like 30 or under, it's not going to make the biggest difference whether or not you're resistance training for your health. But as you age, it makes a world of difference. Building and maintaining muscle mass keeps your metabolism up. It also greatly improves bone density and bone strength, which is one of the things that really contributes to all of the injuries and accidents that you see in older people. It also helps you maintain your independence longer, which is huge for mental health. There's so many health benefits to having muscle mass on your body. So that is my personal recommendation as minimum for health. Obviously there are exceptions, like I had to completely step away from exercise for my health, so this doesn't apply to everyone, but as a general recommendation, that is what I recommend. And then the second reason that you don't just want to rely on a calorie deficit with 0 exercise for weight loss is the fact that this weight loss is not body fat loss. It's going to be a total reduction in body weight, which includes muscle and fat, which may ultimately actually increase your body fat percentage. As I lost weight when I wasn't exercising, it was definitely coming from muscle and fat, and I ended up at about the same body fat percentage that I started in. So my body composition doesn't really look much different. If anything, my body fat percentage is a little bit higher, and so I look like I've gained fat. This brings me to the point of the minimum amount of training that you need to do to reduce body fat percentage or build muscle, which is what most people are after. This is where resistance training becomes an absolute necessity because you have to send the muscle building signal to not only build muscle but also just to maintain muscle mass. If you're in a calorie deficit, it's very unlikely that you're going to be able to build muscle, but you still need to be sending that muscle building signal to maintain the muscle mass that you do have so that as you lose weight, the weight comes out of fat rather than from your muscle. With this goal in mind, the minimum amount that I recommend is resistance training at least 2 times per week. There's a chance you could get away with resistance training once per week and then doing like body weight exercises or resistance band training on other days of the week, but in general, just easier to think 2 days per week of lifting heavy. The reason that 2 times per week is the minimum is due to the length of the muscle building signal that is generated by one resistance training session. So whether you're trying to lose fat or build muscle, if you're trying to change your body composition by being in a deficit or a surplus, you want that muscle building signal to be elevated above baseline. If it's not, then if you're in a deficit, you're going to be in a catabolic state and potentially burning muscle. And if you're in a surplus and it's not elevated, then the extra calories get stored as fat. And in order to keep that muscle building signal elevated, you need to train at the right times to make sure it doesn't dip back down to baseline. So what happens when you train is you send a muscle building signal, obviously. So that spikes right after training and it goes in a curve shape. And this curve for most people is going to last about 72 hours until it gets back down to baseline. So what you want to do is you want to train, elevate that signal, and then train again before it gets back down to baseline so that it's never getting back to baseline. And if you train 2 days a week, you can accomplish this. So if you train on Monday, it goes like that, and then on Thursday, it goes like that, and it just stays in the curve and not tapering back down. Whereas if you only train 1 day a week, the muscle building signal will only be elevated for about 3 out of 7 days. So you have 4 days where you're kind of not really accomplishing as much or really moving in the right direction as efficiently. So basically the answer to the question that I got on Instagram is yes, if you can only train 2 days a week and count macros, you are set. That is perfectly adequate. That is going to help you get to your goals. Ultimately, I obviously recommend at minimum training for health, and then if you want to change your body composition and you're training 2 days a week with resistance training, I recommend adding in the extra 60 minutes of activity because the healthier you are, the better your body will respond to everything. So even if you are just trying to train to change your body composition, I do recommend getting in those 60 minutes of activity because it will add to that, but at minimum, you don't really have to be doing the 60 minutes of activity. I just highly recommend it. So with the minimum amount of training established, let's talk about the upper ceiling, the maximum. The amount of training where your progress is actually going to start tapering off and possibly even reversing. This is called overtraining. And honestly, the limit is different for every single person. So I can't give you an exact number. However, I did make an entire video about overtraining, signs and symptoms, who may be susceptible to it, ways to combat it, things you can do, different tests you can do to see if you're overtraining, etc. So I'm gonna link that down in the description box below, but I'll also give you the TLDR version right now. Basically, the idea of overtraining is somehow kind of controversial, which it shouldn't be, because obviously you can train too much. No human body should be running a marathon every single day. Like, I think that is a good example of clearly that would be overtraining. But I think it's also a lot more common than people realize, especially in particular groups of people that are really trying to push themselves or have a bad relationship with exercise. Like, there are a lot of different things that can drive overtraining. It can even come down to just not being aware of how your body is responding to exercise, which is what happened to me. I ended up overtraining for a little bit because I just kept pushing myself a little bit more, and eventually it was too much, but I didn't really realize it until I backed off. There are a lot of symptoms of overtraining, which I go into more detail in my video about overtraining, but just as an overview, if you're hitting plateaus constantly, if you are in pain, insomnia, changes in mood, changes in hormones, constant fatigue, a decrease in appetite, all of those things can be signs of overtraining. One symptom here and there, not necessarily overtraining. Like, obviously all those can be caused by different things, but it could be overtraining. So if you're one of those people that just loves training and wants to train as much as possible, I highly encourage you to look out for those symptoms and also do some of the tests that I talk about in my other video to see if you might be overtraining. And it's also super important to note that the amount of training that your body can handle will change over time depending on your circumstances. So if you are in a period of your life that is completely stress-free, you're getting 8 hours of sleep every night, your nutrition is on point, you're gonna be able to handle a lot more training than you will if you end up coming into a time where it's a lot more stressful, you're sleeping a lot less, basically like finals week. The amount of stress that your body can handle is finite. If you are getting stressors from all other kinds of places, then the additional stressor of exercise could tip the balance into not being so good for your body. And I know this is all kind of vague, so I want to give you at least one concrete thing to walk away with, and that is that most people should not be training 7 days a week, or at least doing intense training 7 days a week. Some people can get away with 6 days a week, but even that is going to be pushing it for the average person. For most people, 2 to 5 days a week is kind of going to be in the sweet spot, and beyond that, it's going to be pushing it, and you're going to have to be on point with all of your other factors that are contributing to your body's recovery, your stress levels, etc. Which brings me to the last piece of the puzzle, which is the ideal amount of training, the sweet spot that you want to hit to get maximum results. The general rule is that you always want to be doing the minimum amount to elicit change, because the body is an adaptation machine. If you start off doing X amount of work, your body is going to adapt to X, and so you need room to do X plus 1, X plus 2, X plus 3, so that as your body adapts, you still have room for growth. If you start off all out, like doing everything that you can, you don't have room to add to that, so once your body adapts, you're kind of stuck. Again, the minimum for this is 2 times per week, but beyond that, it really comes down to your history with exercise, where you're currently at, and where you want to be. So if you've only ever trained 2 times per week, it's possible that all you need to do to elicit change is change the style of training. If you've only ever trained in hypertrophy, you could still keep training 2 times a week, but instead train for strength. There's definitely no need to go from training 2 days a week to training 6 days a week in order to see progress. Or maybe if you've been consistently training 4 days a week, you've trained in all kinds of modalities, and you're not really seeing progress, maybe you want to kick it up to like 5 days a week. And this is actually how I structured Brains and Gains, my workout program for students that just launched in January. It is phased, and it also gives you the option to work out between 2 days a week and 6 days a week. So within each plan, you pick the number of days per week to work out, and then it's a semester-long plan that is in 3 different workout phases. One of them is strength, one of them is hypertrophy, and one of them is performance. So you could just cycle through. If you just pick 3 days a week, you can train 3 days a week and cycle through that over and over and over. You can redo that program at 3 days a week, and because it's phased, you can continue to see progress because you're continuing to change your exercise modality. I think I might end up doing a fitness starter kit video about building a workout program, because my last fitness starter kit video kind of explained phasing and all of that, so I'll link that down in the description box below. But let me know if you want a fitness starter kit video on how to build your own training program, or at least build your own workout. I think some people have requested that before, so I want to give you guys what you want. Speaking of which, if you have any other requests for videos, leave them down in the comments below. If you have any questions about fitness or health, leave them down there, and I will try to make a video on them in the future, or an Instagram TV video. Been getting into that to answer quick questions. Overall, I hope this video kind of helped you narrow down the scope of the optimal training frequency. I know it sucks that I can't really give one clear-cut answer for everyone, but everyone is just so different, with different lifestyles, different history with exercise, different goals, that it would be impossible for me to say everyone should train 4 days a week with an upper-lower split. That's just, if anyone does say that, that's irresponsible. Stop listening to them. I hope you guys liked this video. I hope you learned something. If you did, please give it a big thumbs up, because it really does support me and my channel, and I really genuinely appreciate it. Please share this video with your friends, your family, your training buddies. If you want to see more videos from me all about exercise and how to implement it, you can check them out over here. Hit that subscribe button to see future videos from me all about health and fitness and wellness. Make sure you hit the notification bell if you want to get notified when I post those videos, and I will see you very soon. Bye.